All right, today we're going to be looking at how dramatic we can get with the Byredo Vesuvio palette. This is a palette that's been out for a few weeks now. I did have to wait for it to be shipped internationally. That did take some time, although now you can get it in the US as well. In general, I haven't tried too many luxury eyeshadow palettes, and I was really excited to give this one a go because the color story seemed compelling to me, and I was drawn to the fact that it looked like you get some interesting formulas. And I wanted to dive into trying a few new to me brands in general this year. We're going to do detailed swatches for looks and finish up with some wrap-up thoughts, so let's go ahead and get into it. This palette is pricey. It retails for $115. Byredo is what I would consider to be a luxury brand, and they're based in Sweden. My understanding is that they have a lot of these 18 pan eyeshadow palettes that are typically limited edition. This palette is what I would consider to be a mix of warmer tones and cooler tones, primarily shimmers, but you do have some matte shades and some satin shades. I'm brand new to these formulas, so I'm going to be learning as I go along. To me, it seemed like there were only a few shades that are true mattes in the palette, and they felt like a cream to powder formula. For me, my impression from looking at this palette and some of the previous palettes from Byredo in general is that it seemed to me like I could get some pretty editorial, dramatic looks from them. And that's what we're going to test out and see today. You have some pretty shimmery metallics in here. There really aren't chromes. There may be like one or two shades that you could consider duochrome, but in general, you don't get chrome shades. But I do like that you get a variety of textures. And I do really like the fact that you get some very warm tones and some very cool tones, some very light tones, and some very deep tones. I think that definitely is something I tend to look for in my palettes. To me, it also seems like this palette has a bunch of shades that I think would make really pretty one and done everyday shades. I feel like when you look at this color story, your eyes can't help but go to that red shimmer, and I'm happy to say that in the swatch, it definitely didn't disappoint. No red matte in here though, and I would have loved to see that. You do have some shades in here that look a little bit similar, but nothing that's crazy close from a first glance. Here's what the whole palette looks like swatched to my arm. And as I said before, you have a nice mix of warm and cool tones. You do get some colorful shimmers, although the mattes that are included are neutral mattes. Okay, we're gonna get into some looks, and before I forget, I do wanna mention I am gonna link where you can find this palette. The links are affiliated, and thank you so much if you do decide to use them. All right, now we're gonna dive into doing some looks. And when I first saw this color story, I was really drawn to the red and the light blue tones. So I think for the first look, I want to do a combination of those. I'm gonna start off with this transition shade. There aren't really many kind of straight up mattes in the palette. I think this is definitely a shimmer heavy palette, but I'm just gonna take that shade and use it as a transition shade all over the lid. And I have used just a little bit of the About Face eye primer before going in with this matte shade and a little bit on the lower lash line. And I don't have a red matte, so I'm gonna use this red shimmer on the outer corner. It's picking up pretty well with this brush, and I'm just going to deepen up the outer corner with that red shimmer. I'm not used to using a shimmer in the outer corner, but honestly, so far so good. Just building up the intensity and then blending out around the edges, and then adding a little bit to the lower lash line to connect the lower lash line with the shadow up above. Priming the lid with a little bit of the Clionadh Shimmer Enhancer. And then I'm going to go in with this bluish shimmer here all over the lid. Here is what that shade looks like on my fingertip. Now these shades aren't shifty, but there are some that are pretty kind of shiny and metallic. This one definitely has some sparkle in it as well. I love the combination of light blue and red. These two shades look so pretty together. And if you're going for something more dramatic, which is what I wanted to see, is how dramatic of looks can I get with this palette, then I think that these two shades are a good combo. Now I'm just adding a little bit to the lower lash line as well. And then as a highlighting shade, because I can't help it, I love a highlighting shade, I'm going to go in with this pale gold metallic and just add a little bit to the inner corner and a little bit to the brow bone. All right, I added some mascara and some eyeliner, and here is the first completed look. And here's with flash, just so you can appreciate that sparkle. Okay, for my second look, I want to focus more on some of the warm tone shimmers, but I am going to start off the same way. I'm going to use that lighter brown matte as my transition shade. And then in the outer corner, I'm going to use this deep brown matte here. And there's only a couple of deep mattes in the palette. I am glad that they put a deep brown and a deep black. I do wish that there might have been a warm toned brown as well. This one is cooler toned, and I like cool tones, but I think that with so many warm toned shimmers in the palette, it might have made sense to have one warmer toned brown matte as well. This has sort of a cream to powder kind of feel to it, and I'm finding that it's blending out very easily. So that's nice in that, you know, we don't really have too many kind of mid-toned mattes, so I'm happy that it's buildable and that it's blending very easily. All right, I primed my lid with the Clionadh Shimmer Enhancer, and now we're going to play with some of these warm-toned shimmers. So in particular, these ones here I think are going to go really well together. I may use just a little touch of the red that I used in my previous look as well. But I'm going to start off with this kind of metallic gold shade and just add it on the inner portion of the lid. And this second row is where you have some of the more intense metallics. This is my first time trying the eyeshadows from Byredo. So this is all a new experience to me. I don't know what the typical formula is. I just want to see like how dramatic I can get with my looks, you know, for me as someone who likes visible makeup. I'm going to go in with this shade here. I'm basically just going to like layer these different shimmers. So I'm going to put that on the middle portion of the lid. And these shimmers are quite soft. They do have like maybe a little bit of flakiness to them, nothing crazy, but it is something to keep in mind. I think that it may be wise to do your eyes first before your base. But I am going to go in with this shade as the third shimmer and just add it as a kind of shimmer gradient here. And then I added those exact same shimmers to the lower lash line as well. And then on the inner corner and brow bone, I'm going to put this first shimmer here. It's also pale gold, similar to the highlighting shade that I used in my first look. I would say it has a little bit more of a satin feel to it, but you can see that there's some definite shine. I really actually like that shade. It's very glowy, really pretty as a highlighting shade. It's not sparkly, but very glowy. I added some liner and mascara, and here is the second completed look. And before I go on to my next looks, here again is my first look and my second look. All right, now we're gonna get into my third look, and a couple of things. One is it's raining outside, so if you hear rain, it's coming down pretty hard. Second is my brother's helping me upgrade my background a little bit, so yes, it looks a little bit different than it did before. I am gonna go in and do a blue smoky eye. So I'm gonna use this blue shade, which is kind of like a satin, and use that as my kind of all over the lid shade, transition shade. Because even though it has some sparkle in it, I think that it is going to work well. And I just want to use a bunch of the metallics that are in here because there's some beautiful cool tone metallics. And I want to use as many shades as I can in the 4 looks that I do, because it's a pricey palette and we want to see how all it can be used. I'm going to add a little bit in the lower lash line. Now I don't really have kind of like a mid-toned blue. I do have that brown, so I could use that. I think I might go in with that a little bit before I go in with that kind of black, gray-black shade, just to go in with something a little bit lighter first. And I'm really liking that these mattes are extremely buildable. I feel like they are user-friendly. And then deepening up the outer corner with this kind of gray-black shade. It doesn't look completely black, but it's the deepest shade in the palette. It's nearly black. Actually, it applied. It looks black. All right, now I'm going to use a few of the metallics. I used this one in my first look. I'm going to use that one again. And then my second one that I'm going to use is this kind of purple toned shimmer. I think those two are going to go well together. So here is what that first shimmer looks like on my fingertip. Just going to put it on the inner portion of the lid, adding a little bit to the lower lash line. And then I'm going to use this purple toned shimmer on kind of the middle portion of the lid and blending it into the matte. And then adding a little bit to the lower lash line. I added some eyeliner and mascara, and here is my third completed look. And then with flash, so you can really appreciate that sparkle. Okay, for my fourth look, I am going to recreate one of the promo pics, and it's a bit of a softer look, so I am curious how it's gonna look on me, but I was inspired, and I would say it's still like, you know, an exciting, interesting look. It's just the colors overall are a little bit softer than some of the other looks I've done. So I'm gonna start off with this brown transition shade and use that all over the crease. Adding a little bit to the lower lash line, just sweeping it underneath. And for that depth in the outer corner, I do think they used this deeper brown matte, but just very softly because, you know, it doesn't look like it's a super deep outer corner. So I think it's just not built up to full opacity. Honestly, I'm not completely sure they use that deep matte, but I have a deeper skin tone than the person that the look is modeled on. But I do think they use some of these softer shimmers. So I'm going to go in with these shimmers and then a little bit of this kind of pinky satin shade in the bottom row. Just gonna take a little bit on this kind of flatter brush and just sweeping a little bit across the lid. That's a very pretty kind of softer shimmer. It's very glowy. I'm gonna go in with that second shimmer and just put it on the middle portion of the lid. And then right in the middle of the lid, I'm going to take a little bit of that pink tone shade and just layer it on top. And I still want my look to have a little bit more warmth than it does. So I'm going to use this red shimmer. And again, I don't think that they dipped into this shade for the look, but I'm modifying it a little bit because my skin tone is different. And I'm just going to add it to the lash line. And then adding a little bit to the lower lash line as well. And here is my fourth completed look. All right, now that we've had a chance to go through everything with detailed swatches and a bunch of looks, let's close up with some wrap-up thoughts on this palette. And as I said before, this is my first time trying any eyeshadows from Byredo. In general, I would say I haven't tried that many kind of what I would consider more luxury eyeshadow formulas. I've tried some, but I definitely haven't tried a lot, and I'm pretty picky about what I try because it does have to be something that I'm interested in for me to want to try it and make a video on it. So I was definitely drawn in by this palette. I love the fact that you get, you know, a wide variety of textures in here and shades, which I think for a palette that you are paying $100+ on is really great. And I felt really inspired by the color story, and you know, I could have made several more looks. So in that way, you know, you saw me make 4 looks. I had a lot of fun creating those looks, and I think they were a great variety of looks. In terms of the formula itself, I really enjoyed working with this palette. I thought the formulas were by and large easy to work with, especially the mattes. I do wish that there were more mattes in here, especially because the 3 mattes that I used, these 3, I guess this is not a straight matte. It looks like it has, you know, some shimmer in it. It wasn't super obvious, but you know, it's not a straight matte, but these were really nice to work with. So I would have loved to see maybe some mid-toned mattes in here, and you know, a red matte would have been really nice, especially because we do have a red toned shimmer and some red tones in general. I think that would have been really useful. And then, you know, there are a few shimmers in here that are a little bit similar. You know, obviously they're not the exact same. There is some nuance, but I would have maybe given a little bit more variety with those tones. Now, if you're looking for a palette that has intense chrome shades or things that shift, this isn't going to be it. However, you do get some very beautiful and intense metallics. I was happy about that. I don't know, again, how this compares with some of the previous palettes because I haven't tried them. However, you know, the packaging feels luxe. You get a lot of different formulas in here, and I feel inspired to use this palette again. I also feel like, you know, I'm not going to be someone who probably picks up every Byredo palette. 1, they're very pricey, and 2, you know, I feel like I would have to be inspired by the color story like I was here. So would I try them again? Yes, I feel like this was a positive experience, and I would definitely give them another shot. But now that I've had a chance to do my deep dive, I would love to know what you think in the comments. Have you ever tried an eyeshadow palette from Byredo? Were you inspired by this one? And what do you think of the quality? If you picked this palette up or if you're planning to, definitely let me know in the comments if you have any luxury eyeshadow formulas that you really enjoy. I would love to hear about them because I am looking to sprinkle in some reviews from luxury brands here and there. As always, I really hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.